Thanks very much. Stephen Fleming, U of A, Vice President of some long title that doesn't mean very much. Senator Schmidt, thanks so much. It's so good to see someone of stature saying the sorts of things that need to be said, and I think I echo every word on your slides in your presentation. I will touch on some of those repetitively, and I'll skip past those quickly because you've seen them, but do want to talk a little about going back to the moon. Your book is Return to the Moon, and why that's important and why we should do that. Thank you very much. A little bit of agenda to show what we're going to be doing over the next 20, 30 minutes. So who am I, how we got here, what's on the moon, who owns it, so that you can read faster than I can talk, but we're going to come back to this slide. It's kind of a level setting. This is me. I'm a Vice President of Strategic Business Initiatives at the University of Arizona, Georgia Tech engineer, venture capitalist, telecom guy, and I have been, as you're about to see, a lifetime space geek. My major involvement in the space business for the last 20 years and next month has been as a space investor. I've been investing in private space companies for 20 years. But I actually dug this one out. That is me. About 100 pounds lighter and 40 years younger. But I had an op-ed in the Washington Post in 1990 about go get an asteroid. And it's on my website, so if you ever want to read that, basically a lot of the stuff we're talking about here, getting extraterrestrial resources, both for use on Earth and for creating wealth in orbit. I've been talking about this stuff for longer than most of you have been alive. The neat part is it's actually beginning to happen. It's no longer just science fiction geeks and people like me, but it's actually real engineers and real companies that are doing the work, which is exciting. I'm going to do a little bit of a history lesson because the audience is kind of young. So I will first summarize in one slide the human spaceflight strategy of the United States for the last 30 years. Now, a friend of mine saw this slide and said, no, you got it wrong, because every 4 years we spend our time not going to the moon, and then we switch, and every 4 years we spend our time not going to Mars. And I can't really argue with that. But we have had a lot of thrashing back and forth and friction between Mars missions and moon missions, and every time you get a new president, they want to junk what the previous president did, and we've done that several times now, and we'll probably do it again the next time we get a different president. That's not useful. That's not a good way to spend literally tens of billions of dollars of national treasure. But the truth is, except for when, the last time we had people outside of low Earth orbit, you were on that vehicle in 1972. So we have literally been going around, pardon? We have literally been going around in circles in low orbit for 47 years. How many people in the audience are less than 47 years old? There has not been a human more than 300 miles from this planet in your lifetime. That's unforgivable. And my generation deserves to be thoroughly spanked for that. But we need to get back into deep space. We need to get back into the moon. We need to move to Mars. We need to move to the asteroids. We need to do all these things. But we have been literally going in circles in low Earth orbit for 47 years. And even Moses only went in circles for 40. So what went wrong? What happened to get us here? And again, for those of you who are a little younger, I do offend some of my friends at NASA with this next little bit, but I apologize for that. No, I don't. I do offend some of my friends at NASA a little bit. We went off the rails here with the speech when John F. Kennedy announced,
I believe that this nation should commit itself to achieving the goal before this decade is out of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to the Earth.
sexist, sorry.
No single space project in this period will be more impressive to mankind or more important for the long-range exploration of space. And none will be so difficult or expensive to accomplish.
Heroic, right? No. And with respect to the Apollo astronauts who were astonishing, and the tens of thousands of people that made that mission happen, from that moment, we did it wrong. From that moment, we went off the rails. Because look, This was set up to be impressive, to be long range, to be difficult, it was set up to be expensive. It was set up to show the Russians that we could do it, or the Soviets back then, that we could do it better. And we did. Oh boy, did we ever show it. But in the process, we did it in a way, Dr. Smith, this is you, which put people on the moon and brought them home safely, thank goodness, and left no presence, left no industry, left no infrastructure, and really left zero economic value in returning to the moon under that model. And under that model, there was no way you would ever get traction on Wall Street for a Boeing or a Lockheed Martin or any other company of the time to say, great, now that Apollo has been completed successfully at the cost of several percentage points of the gross national product, let's go do that as a private sector program and do it again. That didn't happen because that would have been stupid. And in general, Wall Street is not stupid over the long period. A short period, they can be pretty stupid. So we did a flags and footprints mission. And we are at great risk of doing that again. And I'm not going to go into Artemis, but I'm really nervous about Artemis. This is earlier this year. I don't have audio of this clip, but the stated policy of the United States of America, and when a vice president says something like that, that's a big deal. A lot of people have to sign off on that. To return American astronauts, first woman, next man on the moon, American astronauts, American rockets, American soil. Yay. I think that's great. And as far as that goes, I think that's a wonderful basis for doing it right. It does make me a little nervous sometimes, but we will talk about that later. So why do I care about going back to the moon? Why don't we just send a bunch of rovers, and why don't we just return a bunch of samples and do all the science? Why do I want people to go? Well, what's there? For a matter of scale, a lot of people don't realize the moon's actually pretty big. It's a small body compared to a planet, but it's almost the size of the land area of Asia, and it's bigger than Africa. It's the 8th continent of the Earth-Moon system. And you say, well, is there anything worth having on the moon? Well, is there anything worth having in Africa? Is there anything worth having in North America? Yeah. You've got an entire continent to go exploit. And what's there? Well, this is new, or not this is 10 years ago, but it's new since the Apollo missions. The lunar poles are unique, certainly in the Earth-Moon system, possibly the solar system, although Mercury may have the same gig, in that the moon is relatively stable in its orbit compared to the sun, and there are deep craters at both poles. So what I'm going to show here is some video taken from the south, or actually it's a series of photographs which I've spliced into a video, of looking up at the south pole of the moon. This is a Japanese orbiter that went around like orange slices, and a couple times a day it would shoot up into the moon, and you splice that into a video. So here you're looking up at the south pole of the moon. So that takes 28 days, which is the rotational cycle of the moon. And you start looking at some of those craters, and you realize everywhere in those spots, there's never any sunshine. As a matter of fact, there has never been any sunshine there for millions of years. That's the coldest place in the solar system. It's not Pluto. It's the polar craters, the permanently shadowed polar craters of the moon. And that's kind of neat. So these black spots, that's Photoshop, these black spots are places where it's really cold, and it's been cold for a long time. But what happens when things get really cold? They freeze into solids. And there's supposed to be a video right there. And there's not. Okay. So where does stuff hit the moon from? A lot of comets. Comets are basically dirty snowballs. They're rocks and gravel and dust held together with ices. Some of it is water ice, some of it's ammonia ice, some of it's other things, but it's frozen volatiles. Volatiles are gases. And when they hit the moon, in the sunny areas, they vaporize and escape and go away. When they hit these cold traps, they stay. So what we now know is that in these craters of the moon, Shackleton is basically at the South Pole, we're looking upside down now, there's ice, water ice. And water ice is amazingly valuable. not just because we can drink it or get crops with it. You can split it into hydrogen and oxygen, and you've got hydrogen to fuel your rockets, oxygen both as the propellant for the rockets and to breathe, and both of those are important chemical feedstocks for everything you want to do on the moon. And it's already there. We don't have to tote it up from Cape Canaveral. We just have to go there and get it. And we didn't know that when you were on the moon. We first got, people had hypothesized it, but we didn't get any real data until Clementine mission in 1994. Then LCROSS confirmed it about 10 years ago. So we know it's there. We don't know, what format it's in. Is it great big blocks of ice? Is it mixed in with dust? Is it under the surface? Is it on top of the surface? We got to go look. And there are programs underway where robots initially and then hopefully people will go look. But we know there are billions of tons of ice at the poles of the moon, which is enough to manage human activities on that body for a long, long time. And this is relatively new information. Dr. Schmidt mentioned, I won't go into detail, but there's a lot of other stuff up there too. I mean, again, you're the eighth continent. What's on a continent? Lots of stuff. We know there's iron, we know there's aluminum, we know there's titanium. The regolith is made out of silicon. You can make glass out of that. You can use, regolith is a fancy word for dirt. You can use the regolith as it is as a radiation shield. There's just many, many great things that you can access and process on the moon, and you've got basically infinite solar power, so power is not a problem. Keeping things warm in the nighttime is a problem because the night lasts 2 weeks, but that's an engineering challenge. It's not uniformly distributed. The moon is bizarrely lopsided, and Dr. Swindle from LPL has got people actively working on trying to figure out why is the moon so bizarrely lopsided. It's lots of theories, but the truth is the iron oxide is mostly on the near side, so this is the side we see from Earth. There's no dark side of the moon, remember that, Pink Floyd was wrong. Far side has less iron. Titanium oxide, same sort of thing. So you've got some prospecting to do to make sure that if you are going to do industrial scale processing of these resources, you put your lander in the right place rather than the wrong place. So again, that's good science missions. What else is on the moon? Probably gold, probably platinum. There's a lot of asteroids made out of gold and platinum, and some of them hit the moon make craters. Now, what sort of shape is that platinum group metal going to be in after it impacts the moon at several kilometers a second? Maybe a mess. It may not be worth picking up. It may be worth picking up. Platinum group metals are one of the few things that do make sense to bring back to Earth. And we'll talk about that in a couple of slides. But they're, traditionally, under traditional metrics, there could be, billions of dollars worth of platinum and gold just superficially accessible on the moon without deep rock mining. And Dr. Schmidt talked about helium-3. I am not optimistic about helium-3 in the short term. I'm very optimistic about it in the long term. You need a couple of industrial bases to be developed before it makes sense. First, you need to be able to get stuff to and from the moon economically and routinely, and we're not close to that yet, because you have to mine a lot of lunar dust to get enough helium-3 to make a difference. And then at the same time, you need to build a helium-3 reactor here on the Earth, which we haven't done yet. We think we know how. I think that's a matter of engineering, not of science, but engineering costs money. So we would have to do that. So long term, is that the potential solution to humanity's energy challenges? Maybe. Is it going to be the solution to humanity's energy challenges in the next 50 years? I don't think so. I think we should be doing the work on it. We should be getting prepared for it so that our grandkids have basically infinite free energy. Dr. Schmidt touched on this. Andrew's going to touch on this later, so I'll go through this part pretty quickly, but just for completeness. So you've got all this good stuff on the moon, from ice to gold to helium-3. Who owns it? And that has been talked about in science fiction since the 1940s. Any Robert Heinlein fans in the room, please raise your hands. Thank you. With The Man Who Sold the Moon. That book has been read by generations of people who wanted to do interesting things on the moon, including this guy, who thinks he is Delos D. Harriman, I believe. And also this guy, who I believe thinks he's Lex Luthor. But both SpaceX and Blue Origin, which is Jeff Bezos' hobby company at $1 billion a year, are very aware of the discussions which Dr. Schmidt went through on who owns lunar resources, and they're very aggressively pursuing space-based resources. Elon's more interested in Mars than the moon, but many of the fundamental arguments are the same. I'm going to go through this real quick because you saw some of this just previously, but here's just some text from the Outer Space Treaty of 1967. Outer space should be the province of all mankind, not subject to national appropriation, and military bases are explicitly forbidden. So that is the Outer Space Treaty, which is operative international law, and basically everybody salutes and says yes sir, yes ma'am to the Outer Space Treaty. As we said, there was the proposed Moon Agreement, which had some insidiously terrible language about the moon and its natural resources being the common heritage of mankind. That's also in the Law of the Sea Treaty. It bans private ownership of anything by any company or individual. And there's this international regime for sharing. So if I go dig up a piece of platinum on the moon, I've got to bring it back, divide it by 7 billion, and make sure everybody on Earth gets 1/7 billionth of the value. I'm not going to do that. So that's not happening. But as you just heard, these are the signatories to the Outer Space Treaty, and everybody's there. If you care about a country that's got any sort of economic capability of doing anything in space, they're probably a signatory to the Outer Space Treaty. There's 131 of them. The Moon Agreement, that clicker works? Not so much. And if you look at the countries, I mean, the only one that's doing anything in space is India, but you've got Belgium, you've got Guatemala, you've got Pakistan, you've got Turkey, you've got Venezuela. I don't mean to be arrogant, I don't really care what their space policy is, because they're not going to be there anytime soon. The countries that matter in space, United States, China, Russia as a survivor of the Soviet Union, potentially Japan, potentially other places. None of them have signed this, and I dearly hope will not. A little bit of trivia. The Moon Treaty, or the Moon Agreement, was coasting towards ratification in the U.S. Senate under Jimmy Carter. It was going to be signed by the U.S. in 1979. It was stopped by public pressure. Does anybody here know, trivia question, where that public pressure was headquartered? Tucson, Arizona. Yeah, L5 Society was headquartered here, and the L5 Society stopped the Moon Treaty dead by generating a letter. We used to write letters in this country with stamps on them, by generating a letter writing campaign to the Senate saying, hold it, you're giving away the future of the United States economic power. Don't sign that thing. And when the Senate stopped, a lot of other countries took a good solid look, and they stopped as well. So we have a little bit to be proud of in Tucson about that. So anyhow, for the two big treaties, Outer Space Treaty is real. Moon Agreement, people talk about it a lot, but it really has no force that we care about, so ignore it. And I think Andrew's going to talk, I ran him out of the room, sorry. I think Andrew's going to talk about this a little bit, but if you interpret the Outer Space Treaty, absolutely big green check mark, no question, that peaceful scientific exploration of the cosmos is permitted under the Outer Space Treaty, and military or national claims of sovereignty are absolutely forbidden. Then there's this area in between, resource extraction and private sector commerce, on which the treaty is silent. This was 1967, except for science fiction geeks, nobody thought about companies building mines on the moon. And so it doesn't talk about them. And as Dr. Schmidt said, there is a way of interpreting that treaty in a permissive context so that what is not forbidden is permitted. And that is the U.S. interpretation. That's my interpretation. I think that's the interpretation on which you can go off and build billion-dollar or trillion-dollar industries. And so far, Luxembourg and the UAE have signed on to that interpretation. And basically, Europe, Canada, a bunch of other countries have a different interpretation that what is not permitted is forbidden, and that under the exact same treaty with the exact same words, those commercial activities are forbidden. Bye-bye. We'll leave you behind. I don't think there's any reason to pay a whole lot of attention to their interpretation. That's current law. You can read that. It'll be in the handouts. But we do have the act that President Obama signed in 2015, facilitate commercial exploration, discourage government barriers, and promote the rights of U.S. citizens to engage in commercial activities in space. That's wonderful. That is a good, solid, legally valid underpinning under which you can go off and raise venture capital to build companies to do interesting things in space. So, click. So, there is a little footnote here. A friend of mine is Richard Gary. Did anybody ever play the Ultima series video games? He wrote them. He's a zillionaire. He bought Lunokhod 2 from the Russians. He has a receipt that he owns Lunokhod 2 on the moon. And even though the batteries died years ago, it's got a radar reflector, or it's actually a corner reflector, so you can still bounce a laser beam off of it and prove that it's there. So it has not been abandoned. It is still in use. And it rolled 20-odd kilometers across the moon with these, pointer, with these wheels. He tilled the soil. So under a plausible interpretation of law, he owns all that dirt where the Lunokhod drove. Now that sounds like a joke, but he did it as a test case. And he is going to use this as a test case to prove that a U.S. citizen can own dirt on the moon. And I hope he wins. I think it's exciting. With that, I'm going to talk a little about what we can do there. I've got time to go through the medium density version of this. I'm going to talk about physiology. You weren't expecting that in a law seminar. Here is an idea, so ranging from zero gravity to where we are on Earth, from being crippled to being healthy. What do we know? We know that on Earth we're healthy if we eat right and go to the gym. That on Earth in a one gravity field, human beings are evolved to be healthy at one gravity. We have learned that at zero gravity, we are not healthy. And in many, many ways, bone density, muscle atrophy, fluids in the head leading to glaucoma. There are many things about zero gravity which are just frickin' bad for us. We can't be healthy in zero gravity. What about the moon? We've got very, very limited data on human physiology at lunar gravity. As a matter of fact, the most data we've got was you and Gene Cernan were there for about 3 days. And you didn't instantly die, but you don't instantly die at zero gravity in the space station. But we don't know, how healthy you would have been had you stayed there for an extended period of time. We only have 3 days worth of data. There's a lot of questions. But we really only have 2 data points. We've got ISS is bad for you, and Earth is good for you. What about gravity ranges in between? At the moon, which is 1/6 gravity, or on Mars, which is about 1/3 gravity, or on other celestial bodies, or in other situations where gravity is not zero, gravity is not 1. Well, I'm an engineer. I got 2 data points. I can draw a straight line. So if you're 16% of Earth gravity, you're 16% of being healthy. Nature normally doesn't do that. That number 1 is from a longer presentation. I'm not going to do the whole thing, but there are at least 5 scenarios about what your health might look like at lunar gravity. And some of them are kind of disappointing, which is, maybe you need a lot of gravity to be healthy, in which case we're not going to stay on the moon very long. We'll go there for, heroic missions, but you're not going to live and raise your kids there. There's potentially, a little bit of gravity is enough, and maybe, with 1/6 gravity, you're as healthy as you are on Earth. And if that's true, that becomes the most valuable real estate in the solar system, and we can talk about that in the Q&A. I'm going to back up 1 slide to show you. The one I like is actually that you become Superman at 1/6 G. You can fly, you can leap tall buildings in a single bound. And if you're still cardiovascularly healthy and your bones don't deteriorate and you don't get glaucoma and so forth, then the moon is actually going to be a great place for retirement villages. So that's where I want to retire. But we don't know yet. We don't know yet. The last thing I'm going to talk about before we go to questions is you've got Earth, you've got moon, you've got everything in between. There's a fancy word, all you law students know Latin, so cislunar. It's between here and the moon. So why do we need lunar materials? One of the more interesting ideas is taking aluminum and silicon and iron and other substances that we know exist on the moon and sending them to Earth orbit to build power satellites. Because in orbit, you don't get nighttime. So the solar cells work at perfect efficiency all day long. You don't have the problem that solar cells out in the desert do that, at the night they don't work very well. So that's a really cool idea that people have been talking about for 50 years. And we've actually gotten pretty good at building stuff in orbit by putting station together. But right now it costs about, even with SpaceX, it costs about $10,000 a pound to get something into orbit from Earth's surface. And at those prices, you will never close a business case for doing things that are economically ambitious for big scale things in Earth orbit if you're bringing this stuff from Earth. What you want to do is bring it from the moon, or bring it from someplace else, but this talk we're talking about the moon. You could put stuff on the moon, you could have solar energy to create electricity, 2 weeks out of 4. You can build a mass driver, which we built here on Earth, we know how they work. And so basically with no chemical propulsion at all, you could throw pieces of rock or pieces of metal off into Earth orbit and use that to assemble these very, very large scale structures. And what's that worth? Well, if you go buy a liter of water down at Safeway, it's worth pennies. And if you get that liter of water to low Earth orbit, ULA, which is a joint venture of Boeing and Lockheed Martin, will pay you $3,000 a liter for water. So that's the sort of arbitrage we're looking at. So if you can bring that liter of water from the moon, from the ice that we discovered, rather than from Earth, for substantially less than $3,000, you can make money on that. There's a market. But when we talk cislunar, something that people almost never do is show the Earth and the moon to scale. It's further away than a lot of people realize. It's smaller than a lot of people realize. But this shows the Earth-Moon system to scale. There's the moon's orbit. This is where the big geosync satellites live. Red on black's hard to see on screen, I'm sorry. But this circle is the geosync. The kind of rainbow is the Van Allen belts. And just skimming the surface of Earth's atmosphere is low Earth orbit. That's where International Space Station is, and that's where these fleets of satellites that Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos and that crowd wants to put up. They're nowhere near getting to the moon. But there's a couple of other interesting places where the gravitational attractions balance out. It's called Earth-Moon Lagrange 1, 2, there's 3, 4, and 5. We're not going to talk about those in this presentation. Earth-Moon Lagrange point 1 is where the weight of gravity pulling you towards the Earth and the force of gravity pulling you towards the moon are balanced. Now, you don't just spung into place there. I mean, you have to keep moving around it, so I'm showing it's like an orbit. But at that point, you can stay in that relative position between the Earth and the moon during a monthly rotation for almost no energy. It's very, very cheap to stay at Earth-Moon Lagrange 1. And the thing to keep in mind that unless you've got people on board, because people like to eat and breathe and things like that, if you're just sending stuff, the transport costs in space have almost nothing to do with distance. It's all to do with energy. How much energy does it take to get from one orbit to another? So it's delta V, not delta T. Now, passengers are a different story, but passengers are a tiny fraction of the amount of stuff we're going to need to move around in cislunar space. So if you look at the geosync orbit here, which doesn't show up terribly well on screen, but it's about that radius, and Earth-Moon Lagrange point 1 here, getting from here to there and back, actually just from here to there, costs about 4% of the energy of getting from here to there, from Earth's surface to geo-orbit. So if you want to be servicing satellites in geosynchronous orbit, which is where the ComSats live, it's way cheaper to service them from materials and potentially people stationed at EML1 than from Earth. That's way further. It's way cheaper. And you start looking at these trade routes. This would be to low Earth orbit. This would be to the lunar surface. This would be to called the direct retrograde orbit. We won't go into that. And then actually going other places that are not in the Earth-Moon system. it turns out that from a relatively nearby position at EML1, you can get lots of places real cheaply. And so this is showing the delta V. This is the amount of energy you would need to move from one place to another. From Earth's surface to anywhere is a pain. Climbing out of the Earth's gravity well is expensive, it's noisy, it's potentially dangerous. It's not something that you want to do more often than you have to. Once you're up in any of these places, getting back and forth between almost any of the others is really cheap. So if you've got a station at Earth-Moon Lagrange 1, said getting to GEO is cheap, getting to the low lunar orbit is cheap, actually getting lunar surface, getting to Mars orbit is cheap. Takes a while, but if it's a robot, you don't care. So you could actually, build a fleet of Mars orbiters and launch them out of assemble and launch them out of EML1 really, really cheaply, way cheaper than doing it from Earth. So that's an interesting bit of orbital dynamics that leads you to think that if you're really looking at an economy based on Earth-Moon system, there's a place to put, or an area to put some stations at Earth-Moon Lagrange 1, which can really be the hub of a thriving economy. Now, as part of Artemis, there's a program called Gateway, which is going to a different orbit, which is completely wrong for all the wrong reasons, and we're not going to talk about that. But I will end with a quote from Kraft Derrick back in the Apollo era. This is one of the reasons I think that we need to go back to the moon, is that God had wanted man to become a spacefaring species. He would have given Earth a moon. He did. We should go back. And with that, Q&A. So, John, over to you.
Thank you, Steve.